Welcome to the Max Quoting and Sales Order Processing training session. I'm your Exact Americas trainer, Vince Stefanetti. In this session, we're going to show you how easy it is to use Max Sales Order Processing and how to use quoting. Now we're going to go over all the basics and we're going to get into more detail as we move along. Don't be worried if you know little or nothing about the module. We're going to start at the beginning and explain everything. It is important to know that you have a complete set of documentation in PDF format installed with your Mac system. You also have an online portal that contains a knowledge base and many other resources. You can gain access to the portal by navigating to https://customers.exact.com. If you do not yet have access to the portal, be sure to contact your customer advocate so you can get a username and password. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn about the sales order information flow, how to set up sales order processing, how to create sales orders, how to do estimating and quoting, how to enter credit memos, how to ship product, and how to use the displays and reports to provide customer service. Alright, so let's go over the information flow for sales order processing. Now this module is designed to facilitate the order entry, shipping, and customer inquiry functions associated with a manufacturing company. A customer service representative can enter and ship sales orders while accessing all the pertinent data for immediate response to customer queries. So let's look at the basic flow of information through the system. As you can see at the top, you have to enter in some static data. That would be in the form of customers, your parts, and all your pricing information. You would then enter quotes, which then can be converted into sales orders, or you can enter orders directly. You would print acknowledgments, print sales orders, pack and ship the product, print packing lists and labels, accrue your shipping totals, then post your sales orders, and print invoices. Alright, now let's look at how you set up sales order processing in Max. First of all, there's some configuration switches in the System Manager that we need to take a look at. Then we'll need to add currency shipped via terms and tax codes. We'll need to create sales reps. We'll add customers and customer value added tax if you need that. We'll add part sales information. We'll enter in any standard notes that you want to print on sales orders and acknowledgments and invoices. Then we'll set some module preferences. We'll show you how to set shipping preferences, and there's the availability of adding reason codes and ship codes. Alright, well let's get started now. Let's log into Max and access sales order processing. Okay, to log into Max, double-click the icon on your desktop and type in your username and password. The default is manager all capitals and password all capitals. Alright, we're presented with the System Manager and there's sales order processing. Okay, well the first thing we're going to go over here is all the various setup actions that are required to provide the sales order processing module with the information that it needs so that you can process sales orders. Now the configuration items for sales order processing can be found in the System Manager under Activity, System Configuration, Sales Order. Now these Max configuration keys are usually set by a system administrator based on company policy before setting up individual modules. Before setting up sales order processing, a review of the settings is really required. There are many ways to configure these switches to meet various business needs. A full reference defining all of the switches is covered in the System Manager documentation. These should be studied and reviewed so that you know the many ways that you can configure sales order processing for your needs. Okay, well let's close that and we'll open up sales order processing. Okay, now the first thing we're going to cover here has to do with some basic setup of information for sales order processing. And if you go to the SOP data menu item off Activity, You can see here that there's a number of items here that are basically static information that are required by the module for you to set up. Customer master, SOP code data, that's where these currency shipped via terms codes and so on exist. Sales rep information, ship address data, part sales information, and so on. Now, if you conduct international business, MAX provides a multi-currency option. Now, you would set up the codes here, but we're just going to go through and set up a domestic currency code. Now, you can do that here in sales order processing. You can also do it in purchasing. So we have one here already. We'll go ahead and browse that, and we'll select US. Now, you can see that the currency code for domestic has an exchange rate of 1, and we gave it the dollar symbol here, and we specified a number of decimal places. Okay, so to add one, just enter in the information, enter in your currency code here, your description, your exchange rate, enter in a symbol for the currency, and enter in the number of decimal places. If need be, you can use a user-defined key and reference field to put in additional information. Next thing you'll have to set up under SOP data, SOP code data, is your ship via codes. Okay, well you define the ship via codes by entering descriptions of standard shipping carriers and associating with each carrier a 2-character code. Now, the carrier information prints on shipping documents such as packing list, shipping labels, and on the invoices. So as you can see here, the yellow highlight is browsable. You can double click that if you have entered shipping codes in already. And we have a few in here. I'll just select one, our first one. And you can see we've coded it, put it in a description. We also have a user-defined key and reference to enter in additional information. So it's really as simple as entering a code, typing in a carrier, and so on. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add that one. Alright, and we'll close it. Okay, so our next item is terms codes. So we'll go to SOP data, SOP code data, and select terms. Okay, now you can establish a set of payment terms that provides customer incentive to pay invoices promptly. Now, such terms could include a percentage price discount applied to an invoice amount paid before a specific date, and MAX prints a brief description of the terms on sales orders and invoices. Now, you define those here in this dialog box. Now, after you define the terms codes associated with a set of payment terms, you select from the list of terms codes during order entry and invoicing to associate the discount payment terms with the respective customer. Now, one thing to note here is that if you are integrated with Great Plains Dynamics, it only supports one set of terms codes, so you've got to make sure that you have these in sync between sales order processing and purchasing, so you can only have the one set. So we can browse here the code master, we can search what terms codes we have here, and we can select one. Okay, so let's enter in a new one and look at some options here for the fields on the terms code maintenance. So I'll enter in a new code there, and I'll put in a description. And I'll put in our net days. And if the discount percent is not equal to 0, so we'll put in a percentage of 15 here. Okay, now you have the option of entering in discount days, a number of days, or a specific day of the month. You can only select one or the other. If we select days, then you see it blanks out the discount date. But if we want to use a specific day of the month, we'll make that 0, and we'll put in here the 15th of the month. Okay, you also have the ability to enter in a user-defined key or reference for additional information. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, so note that these are only active if you have financial integration turned on in MAX. So if you don't, then those actually aren't available. Alright, we'll save that. Okay. Alright, let's look at our next item here. Under Activity, let's go look at the tax codes. Alright, so you define individual tax codes that associate with a tax rate and a description. So here's your description and here's your rate. During the order entry and invoicing process, MAX calculates and includes state and local tax charges in order totals based on the taxes applicable to each customer and the locations in which they do business. MAX also collects monthly and annual tax history using tax code references. Okay, so let's select a code. We'll browse for it here. And we'll enter the first one here. Okay, now a few other fields here that are really important. One is the GL account. Now you set these up in the chart of accounts in MAX for each tax code, and you can actually review these. I'll show you a report in a moment. You can enter in some comments, and you have the user-defined key and reference fields here. You could specify rounding. You have a few options here: normal, up or down, number of decimal places, and it keeps track of the tax history down here. Now, as far as the accounting integration is concerned, it's really necessary that you enter in all these in the chart of accounts, for one. And the other important thing to know here is that you have to enter different ones for sales order processing and for purchasing. They can have the same descriptions, but the codes have to be different. Alright. We'll go ahead and close that now. Okay, so let's take a look at that report. So in sales order processing, under reports, you can select this, the tax code list. And we'll do all and we'll run the report. Okay, so here's our report. And this is a handy report because you can review all the tax code information, your tax history, and so on. It'll give you the GL account number, so you can. This is very handy if you need to do an audit of all your tax codes. It lists them all. Okay, I just wanted to point that out so you could see that you have a facility for reviewing all of them instead of just browsing through the tax code screen. So we'll close that now. Okay, so we just went through and we reviewed some important information under the code data. That was the currency shipped via terms and tax codes. Alright, now the next thing we're going to look at here is the sales rep. So you go to Activity, SOP Data, and select Sales Representative. Okay, so let's browse and select one. Okay. So this screen is pretty straightforward. What you do is you enter in an ID for the rep, enter in the person's name, and enter in their territory. Now when you add a territory here, it automatically is added to the system and becomes browsable. If we double click on that and we erase that and look at all, it'll show us all the territories that have been entered for reps. So you want to try to keep this consistent, of course, in spelling and so on. So MAX also keeps track of the sales, month to date, year to date. You can enter in the quota here, and you can enter in the prior year information, and it automatically calculates the gross margins based on the sales order processing and invoicing in MAX, and it'll also specify the commissions earned. Okay, so at the onset you'll want to go through and add your sales rep if you're going to use this functionality, and update them and save them. If you have information from prior sales, you can update that here, and MAX will continue to accrue this information as you process sales orders through the system. Okay, and there's also a report on sales representatives. So click on Report and then scroll down to the sales rep report. You can do a representative list, or you can do it on commissions. We'll do it a representative list. We'll select all and run the report. Okay, so here's our report. Very straightforward. It's a listing by sales rep ID, name, and territory, and giving the sales, gross margin, and commissions earned information, just as in the dialog, but it's a consolidated list, and it shows everybody. Okay, we'll close that. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is the customer master and building your customer information files. So from SOP data, select customer master. Okay, now we've entered in a lot of supporting information here so that we can actually go through and enter in information in the customer master data file. So we'll go ahead and browse here and select one so we have some information to look at here. All right. Okay, so let's look at some of the fields here. So type actually specifies whatever the customer type may be, and this is user defined, and you can enter that in here. When we get over to the section on part sales, we're going to go over how this can affect pricing. If you click the sales button, this will show you the month to date, year to date, and last year totals for sales and cost of goods. Okay, you can put the customer on release or put them on hold. You specify the currency code. You can specify the sales rep ID, and these yellow highlighted fields are browsable, so you can browse on currency code. We don't have multi-currency turned on, so we're just selecting US. Sales rep, this is browsable too, and you can select one of any of the sales reps that you've entered in previously. Okay, and it'll display the territory. Okay, now let's talk about the shipping info a little bit here. Okay, so you can specify the ship via, in this case it's Federal Express, and you can enter in an FBO point. Now the other part we're going to look at here is between the general info, the default address, which is over here for the customer, the ship to, and the ship through. Now, under Activity, SOP Data, Ship Address Data, you can maintain the ship to addresses for a particular customer, and you can have multiple ship codes for an individual customer. And you can even specify specific tax codes for that location. We'll browse here, and you can see our customer number 100 here has 3 addresses in the system. Okay, so this is where you maintain all those ship to addresses. I'll close that. Now the other one we want to look at here is the ship through. Okay, and these are additional addresses, but they're shipped through addresses in the case where you may have a customs broker or what have you. Okay, so you maintain those here. Now when you specify them in the customer master, if you specify a ship to and you don't specify a ship through, we'll just say none, it's going to use this ship to address when you add the sales order. Now if you don't specify one and you select default, then it's going to use this address here. If we click on show details, this is the default ship address for this customer. Now you can override that by entering in a ship to. Now if you specify a ship through, then this is the item that'll be specified on the sales order when you enter it. If you select none here and you just have the ship to, well, it's going to use this address. If you have none specified, default address and none here, then it's going to use the default. Now keep in mind when you add the sales order, you can change these on the fly or enter in what you want to. But this is just going to specify how it's displayed by default on the sales order. If none are specified here, it's going to use the general info or the default address. If you specify a ship to, it's going to use that one. And additionally, if you happen to have that filled in and you specify a ship through, well, that's what it's going to show. Okay, so you can specify the tax information here. You can make the customer taxable or non-taxable. Ours is taxable, and we entered in all three codes here. Alright, let's look at finance. Okay, well, you can specify a terms code, and this is browsable too. And select your terms. You can specify a credit limit and a discount rate. Now, you could specify whether that discount percent applies to both the line item and the order, the line item only, or the order only. So you can make your selection here to determine that. Statements, if this is checked, this signifies that the monthly statement should go to this customer. Likewise for finance charge, whether a finance charge is applied to the customer if they're outside the terms. These actually show up on the customer list report, which we're going to show you in a minute here. If you have financial integration turned on, then you can click on this. It'll give you some additional data for the integration. Value-added tax, if you're using this, you could look at the registration date, the expiration date, and put in the codes here. And additionally down here, if you do not want to allow back orders and only ship complete to customers, then you could check this, and when you try to do the shipment, Max is going to give you a warning. Okay, and the buttons at the bottom here under Action are Close, Update, Delete, Clear, and you can click the button for Help. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close this. And we'll choose to save. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that customer list that I mentioned earlier. First one on the menu. Okay, and we'll go ahead and start and end with to select all of them. And you can actually select to print the shipping addresses. I don't want to do a super long report, so I'm not going to select that, but you can do that if you'd like. And click Report. Okay, and here's our customer list with all the detail. So this is a nice consolidated report that shows you all the customer information for all customers in the system or select ones. Okay, we'll close that. Okay, so now let's look at part sales. So from the menu, Activity, SOP Data, and click on Part Sales. Alright, so you can see there's a number of tabs in this screen, and we're going to go through all of these. It's important to know that you have to enter this information before you start creating sales orders. The part sales file holds the sales price, sales unit of measure, cost, and up to 9 separate discount prices based on quantities. Max can automatically apply defined discounts to orders and invoices using the part sales file based on sales order quantities. Now I'll mention here before we go further into part sales, so I'll close this, and I'm going to go to Batch, Update Part Sales. Now this program can pull over information from the part master file. You can update all part sales data from the part master file. You may not want to do that, but you can update new part master records only, so if new parts get added in, you can pull those over. And you can update specific too and specify a range. You could also specify the part type code right here. So if you were to update all from part master, you may want to just enter in normal manufactured parts or very top level master scheduled parts. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that here so you see you have a facility for pulling over this so you don't have to do that kind of double entry. Okay, let's close that, open up part sales again. Okay, there we are. Okay, so let's select a part that's already in the system just to review these fields. So I'll double click and I'm going to browse the part master and I'm going to select our computer here. Okay, so you see it pulled in the description 1 and the description 2. If you browse here, you can go through and look at the part sales browser. So if you're doing entry of part sales information, Under Part ID, it's looking at the Part Master, so you can select specific parts from Part Master. But if you want to go into the screen and look at what you have already in Part Sales, you can click this ellipsis button here, and it'll show you what's in Part Sales. Okay, so we have the Part ID, the descriptions here, the primary stock location right here, your tax codes, whether it's taxable or not, and the category. Now the category field is used to specify categories of parts for Part Sales. This is user defined, and you can use it for reporting purposes. Okay, now the unit of measure, you could specify the sales unit of measure here. Max pulls in the bill of materials unit of measure here, and you have a conversion factor. Now what the conversion factor does is that it calculates the sales price per unit of measure from the bill of materials unit of measure saved in the Part Master file. Now Max uses this conversion factor to maintain cost of goods sold from sales revenue. So say for instance you sell in cases and you manufacture in eaches, and each case has 50 in it, then you'd want to specify a conversion factor of 50. So that when you do the shipment transaction or you add the sales order here, you're going to be selling individual cases, but then when you relieve inventory on the shipment, you're going to want to take 50 out of stock. Now these check boxes here, apply discount, create master scheduled order, do not allow back orders, and manual pricing, have specific functions. If you check apply discount, what that means is that the discount on this part, when it is ordered on a specific line, will have an additional discount to that entered in on the customer. So you want to make sure if you want to apply that additional discount to include this. If not, leave it unchecked. Now, master scheduled orders are orders that are created for M part types in Max. If you recall back at our bill of materials or parts and bill of materials session, we went over the M part type. So what you can do here is you can have Max automatically generate an associated master scheduled order for this particular part. Now what that effectively does is it immediately provides a master scheduled order for MRP to actually create demand further down the structure for the master scheduled part. So if you want to do that, go ahead and check that here. Do not allow back orders. That's pretty self-explanatory. Max will not allow you to have back orders on this part if that's checked. And manual pricing. Now we'll touch on that when we actually go through and add a sales order and we look at the line item detail. Okay. Okay, we have two other items on this tab, the product line and the critical path lead time. Now the product line is a 4-character field, and it's user defined, that represents the product line for this part ID. Product lines are required in order to establish product line price schedule relationships used in the price schedule matrix. So we'll be going over that shortly here. Now the critical path lead time, now you can enter that here. Now if the switch for critical path lead time is set to yes using the system manager, that's under the configuration switches, then Max will recalculate the part's critical path lead time when running the critical path lead time report, and it'll display it here and on the planner tab in Part Master. Now this allows personnel to see the lead time on the production of the part. Okay, and after that we have our user-defined key and reference. Okay, let's go to our next tab, and that's the quantity price breaks. I'll click on that, and you can see we have our part here, our PowerServe 2299, and we have a unit price that we specified here, and that's the basic unit price for this unit. Now Max allows for up to 9 quantity price breaks. We have a couple entered in right here, but if you want to add additional ones, you can specify the quantity, and you can specify the discount percent for that, and Max will go ahead and calculate the price for you based on that percentage. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. That's just a straight quantity discount price. Okay. And let's move on to our next tab here. Okay, the next tab is the History tab, and this will give you all the history information for that particular part, and it'll also show you the current on hand, total on hand, sales committed thus far, and the quantity available. It'll also show you the stock ID and whether it's nettable or non-nettable and so on. Okay, so we're going to take a look at customer-based pricing here. We'll enter in our part. Okay. Now, as you can see here, this one isn't currently under customer-based pricing, but if we were to do it, what we'd have to do is enter in the part ID and then enter in the type. Now, this type field, if you remember back to when we were working in the Customer Master, I'll go there now, we had a field here called type. So let's select a customer. Okay, and this customer here, Magna Corporation, is a type of OEM. So let's go back over to part sales. Go to customer based, and we'll enter in our part. Okay, now if we double click here on the type, what we're doing is we're specifying the category of customer, or the type of customer. So we'll double click that, and we'll look at our selections here. So we have DLR, OEM, and DIR. So for Canada and for US. So we're going to select OEM US, and you can see there's a price specified there. So we'll double click that and drop it in there. Okay. So really what we have here in customer based is the ability to specify a customer type as categorized in the Customer Master or defined there on the customer, and to the part. So we specify the type, we specify the part, we enter in the base price here, and then we can enter in the quantity discounts right here. Now if you set this flag here, apply discount, and you have that checked, it means that the customer discount that's applied on the Customer Master will also be applied to line items when this part is ordered. Okay, well, we just looked at two different ways of providing quantity price breaks. One was our initial one here, just specified for the part, and our other one is customer based, where we can put in the part ID, the customer type, and then provide quantity price breaks on those. The next one we're going to look at here is under part schedule. So MAX also supports part and product line schedules that define unique pricing for product lines sold to different customers. Schedules can also be discounted. You may assign an unlimited number of product line price schedule relationships to each part ID. Schedules are user-defined categories within a product line. You can apply product line schedule pricing to orders for only those customers with the type of SCH. So really what you're building here is you're looking at the part, you're looking at the product line for that particular part, that you've categorized it by over here under part sales. You're saying that it's part of this product line, and then you're entering in all the different schedule prices for that, and you can enter these, it's user defined. You can add as many schedules as you want to for that particular part and associate the price with it. Now remember, we tagged our customer as SCH. Okay, so if we go over to activity, we need to tie the customer to the product line. So we'll select this here of SOP data customer product line schedule. We'll enter in our customer, which is under SCH type, and we'll put in a product line or select one, and we'll determine which schedule to use for that customer. In this case, we're going to use 1, 2, 3. Okay, now to add another dimension to this, you can go to Activity SOP Data and go to SO Schedule Discount, and you can enter in your product line. You could specify a schedule and give that a special discount. Okay, and this will apply to that any items for that particular part on that particular order for that customer. Okay, so let's go back over to part sales now. Alright. Okay, the last tab we're going to look at is the Customer Part Data Maintenance tab. I'll click that here. Now you can add a customer ID, a max part identifier, and then enter in customer part ID specific information. So we can enter in a customer part ID here and enter in a description. And you have a few other descriptions here. You have 4 in fact. You could put in the customer list price if you want to. And you could specify whether that customer part ID prints on sales orders, on packing list, or on invoices. So you can select all or one or none. You also can enter in a user-defined key or reference field as well here. So that's another little feature here for part sales maintenance. Okay, so we'll close part sales maintenance and we'll look at our next item here, which is the standard notes. So from SOP data, select standard notes. Now, standard notes allow you to establish notes that always print on orders, always print for specific parts, always print for specific customers, or print for the part and customer relationship. So if we go for order here, quite simply you enter in the note and save it. For part, select the part ID and enter your note, and then save that. For customers, likewise, select the customer, enter the note, and save. And lastly, for part and customer, enter in the part, enter the customer, and then enter in the note. Alright, so that's a nice feature if you have specific notes and information that you would always want to have print on orders, always print for a part, always print for a customer, or for the part and customer relationship. Enter and add your standard notes before you start adding sales orders. Okay, now I'd like to show you about some preferences that are available for the sales order and for the ship order. I'm going to click on activity here and select order entry, and I'm going to select an order number. It's currently open, this one here. And then I want to show you under options here, preferences. Now you should look at these preferences and find out what's going to work best for your company. There's a number of them here. You can auto-save line items, auto-save the notes, which are editable. You can have the order numbers ascending or descending order in the browser. And you have a whole series of warnings here that you can set up to warn people when they're adding a sales order. So you can select all of them or none of them. You can determine how the lines and deliveries are generated when you're doing order entry. And the due date, you could have it be filled in from the prior line item or use the order date. So there's a number of different things here, including having a custom logo up on the left-hand corner here. You can specify your own and it'll show up there. Okay, so I'm going to cancel out of that. I'm going to click this icon right here, switch form, and that automatically switches us over to the ship order. I'm going to click on options, preferences, and we have a whole other set of preferences for the ship order. Okay, so you have the saving feature here, how the discount is actually displayed, be it money or percentage. You can specify a warning if there's no credit available. That's probably a good idea. And you can specify the overshipment amount and put in the excess amount here. You can also enable during ship order, which is a shipment on the entire order, whether it creates an exception report for you or not. Okay, so I wanted to go through those before we get into the next section in the training here, where we're actually going to be using these screens. Okay, well there's one last item I want to go over before we move on to the next section, and that's reason codes. So I'm going to click on activity here SOP data, and I think you probably saw this when we were looking at code data and may have wondered what it was, and that's the reason codes. So Max allows you to enter in these reason codes to allow you to categorize orders into different categories. So you can specify the code, you can add them here, you can review one if you want to or change it. But I'm going to go ahead and add a new one here. And just going to add that little bit of text there and add the reason code. Now when you're adding orders, if you want to add a reason code to the order, we'll go back over to the sales order and we'll go click on sales order and go to order detail. Now there's some additional tabs here, as you can see, the tax, the currency, and the sales account. Now you can specify the reason code here, and you can use this for reporting later on. We'll select our number 6 that we just added there, the marketing campaign, and apply that. Now that order is now tagged, specifying that it was part of this marketing campaign, and we can run a report or access that or that set of orders that have come in off that campaign using the reason code. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've gone over so far. From activity, we went into SOP data, sales order processing data, and we set up all the code data. That was the currency codes, the ship via codes, terms, tax codes, and then lastly we went over the reason codes. We learned how to set up customers, and we learned how to set up part sales and all the pricing structures. We also went over how to set up standard notes. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at quoting. The Max Quoting module adds features to the sales order processing module that extend the sales order process to include estimating and quoting functionality for all Max part types. Now, as you can see here, we have a familiar screen, so the quote form utilizes the familiar features of the sales order module to enhance your ability to begin the sales order process before initiating the sales order itself. Max uses the order number series beginning with the 9 for each quote number. Okay, so before we start adding the quote, let's have a look at some preferences here. So under options, you have preferences, estimating, background. You also have some features here which you can select or unselect. Standard, that affects the toolbar at the top. Status bar is the one at the bottom here. You can add or remove that. We'll put it back. And then you have the shortcut pane over here, which is the control panel, where you have shortcuts, notes, and system notes. As gone over before in earlier sessions, you can access the shortcuts here, and you can place any number of the menu items that you have in sales order processing, in particular quoting here, onto the shortcut bar. So we could select a couple here. We'll put customers and maintain part sales there. They're important. Click OK, and then the shortcuts are there. So you can hide the control panel. You can pin it back, and you can select not to have it at all by clicking the X. Okay, but we want to have that there, so we'll bring back the shortcut pane, but we want to hide it. Okay, now the preferences here are for the quote form. So these are similar to what you're going to see in sales order processing and in credit memos and so on. You could have the order numbers appear ascending or descending order. You can set these warnings. You can select to autosave the line items. You could select which due date or which date you're going to actually use on the line item. You can select your logo, and if you want to invoke the order detail dialog box when you create an order, you can check that. Alright, so let's go ahead and add a quote. Click OK, and we go to Quote, New. Now the first thing you're going to see is the Customer Master Browser. It prompts you for the customer. So we'll search, and we'll select one. Okay, and then we're presented with some details here about the customer. So just an overview of the form here. If you mouse over any of the fields that provide you with the magnifying glass, that means that it's browsable. So if we go over quote number, we can double click that and it will show us the quotes that exist in the system already. Okay, there are none, but we're going to add one here real quick. But it gives you the quote browser. You can double click the date to get the shop calendar. You can mouse over the ship to, browse that, and likewise if you double click on bill to, you can access the customer master. Okay, you can search for customer PO, you can browse on terms, ship via, you could enter in the FBO point here, just type it in. You can fill in requested by, you can browse the sales rep, again the quote number will give you the quote browser again, and over customer ID will give you the customer master. Okay, so that's the header of the form there. Now let's look into some details. Now we've added one detail line here, but I want to mention something about quick order entry. You'll see here if you double click on the line, you'll get this detail dialog box where you can go through and do all the editing on this specific line, the price, the stock location, the GL account number, all the details on that line. Now I'll close this. If we go over to System Manager, you can see I've opened the configuration editor here, and I'll click on sales order. Now there's a switch here, quick order entry. If you have that set to no, then what happens is it automatically brings up the detail dialog box. You may or may not want that to happen. If you want to do quick entry, then set that to yes. It's like that for default. And then what happens is you can just go through and add the lines one at a time quickly on the form, just like I'm doing here. So, and then tabbing off saves the line. Okay, I wanted to mention that so you can see you have an option to go right to the detail dialog if you want to, or if you just want to add all the lines right on the form here and use that, then just keep the default set to yes. Okay, so let's go back to the details, and we'll just show you some things here really quick. The elevator bar right here allows you to click through the different lines if you want to. We only have a couple on there, but you can see it'll move through the detail for you. You can specify the stock location. You can browse on that. You can put in a % probability for this quote, and you can enter in a number of different details here. You can keep the reference there as the quote line and delivery number if you like. You can specify a recall date or expiration date. And as well, we have a series of buttons here, so you can close it, you can create a new line item, you can save, delete, you can close the line item, you can specify notes, either sales order notes or part notes. And when you enter these, make sure you check which you want them to print on as well. Okay, and you can click on stock info, and this is going to give you information about the part, where it is in the stock locations, what the total on hand is, how much is committed in sales orders so far, and what the total available is. Okay, so let's take a look at how you do the estimate. Under price here, click estimate, and you're presented with this dialog box. It has the customer information, the part description, and you can load in an earlier estimate if you want to. As you go through this, Max is going to save the estimates as the customer description or the customer name, and then the quote, line, and delivery. Okay, so if you click load file, after you select it here, it'll pull in an earlier one if you have earlier estimates that you've been working on. Okay, so down here we have the bill of material part, and we have the part routing. So we'll take the defaults here, although you could select different ones if you'd like, and click the load, BOM, and routing. Now you'll see here you're presented with this spreadsheet, and you can edit this. Any of the yellow highlighted fields here, if you change them, it's going to change the overall material cost here. So we'll just change the quantity per here, for instance, and make that 12. And you can see it automatically builds the price for us there. Now if we want to go ahead and save the file, we can do that. Okay, and if we want to open up and invoke Excel for this, we can do that too. Click Excel and it'll bring the sheet up, and then if we save it, it'll save it back to our form. We'll close that now. Okay, now you could specify the estimated price as well in the which column and which row it is, and then if you click Apply, the Max will update it. Currently it's set to the default, which is the row 6 in J, this field right here, but you can change that if you'd like. Okay, so you can change the yield and so on. This is fully editable. It didn't pull in any routing this time, but we could have if there was actually a routing for this part, and then include additional details here for it to accrue for us. Okay, so to have Max apply the price that you have newly created here in your estimate, what you would do is you'd build it, according to all the details that are here, and then you would specify what the estimated price column and row are. So say we want to use this one down here, the grand total, we would put in column J, and then we put in row 16 and click Apply, and that would pull in that estimate right there. If we wanted to specify additional markup, we could do that. Okay, and then we can go ahead and save that. Alright, and then we'll close. And as you can see here, for that first line in delivery, we now have the estimated price entered in. Alright, one other item of note here, I'll double click on the line again. Now you have the ability after you create the estimate to associate that with the specific quote. So if you right click on the order, you can click on Associate, and as you can see it's bringing up the quote that we are working on here, the XLS file, the spreadsheet file. Now if you want to associate a new one, you can click New, and you can browse for it of course and select it. But I wanted to show you here that you have the ability to associate there, and this association actually carries through if you convert or you clone the quote. So if you go to Quote and you go to Clone or Convert, that association that you made there between the estimate file is retained when it gets moved over to a sales order. Okay, and another item here is if you go through and you create a new line, we'll put in a quantity here in a part, but we're going to put in a part that's not yet in Max. Okay, and obviously that doesn't exist. Now you can see the warning message that we have here. It's the part ID that you've entered is a non-inventory part. If the part doesn't exist in part sales, then what's going to happen is you're going to get this warning message. It'll let you go ahead and add the part and enter in information for it, but it's a non-inventory part. So I wanted to mention that here just so that you could see if the part is not in Max, you could still add the part on the quote. However, it is not, quote, a Max part. Okay, so that's all we're going to cover on quoting for the moment. I'll go ahead and close that. The next section that we're going to cover here is sales orders. So I'll go to Activity, Order Entry, and here's our sales order dialog box. Okay, as you can see, we have a very similar layout to the one we had in quoting. This dialog box has all the information for the header and all the information for the detail on the sales order. If you mouse over any of these fields, like in quoting, you're going to get that magnifying glass, which means that it's browsable. To add a new order, click on Sales Order New and select Customer Order. Now it'll prompt you for the customer. You can select one here. Okay, now you can see it popped us up this dialog box here, Sales Order Detail. So you can actually invoke this if you'd like. You can use that to enter in the tax information, the currency data, also the GL account and a reason code if you're actually using that functionality as we covered earlier. So we're going to go ahead and enter some information there and go ahead and save it. But I wanted to show you one more time here under Preferences. You can see that the order detail is checked here. If we uncheck that, then that dialog box won't show up. So we're going to go ahead and turn that off for now, so the next one we add won't do that. Alright. Okay, so let's take a look at the ship to information. This is a browsable field. If you double click it, you get the shipping info browser, and you have the ability to specify a ship code, which you entered in under activity here, SOP data. You can look at the ship history, the history of addresses for the shipments, and you have the ability to put in a ship through code if you're using a distributor or a broker. One item of note here, if you go back over to System Manager, go to Activity, System Configuration, under Sales Order, way down at the bottom here, you have Update Ship to Info. Now the default is yes. Most are going to want that. If it's set to no, then what happens is the changes that you make in the Ship to Info box in Sales Order Processing don't roll all the way through to the invoice. So you want to make sure you have that set to yes if you want that to carry on through. Okay, so we'll close that. Go back over to Sales Order Processing, double click again, and if you had set up ship codes, then you're going to be able to browse them here. On this particular customer, we have 3 that are specified. You could also use the default. So if you click default and click OK, we'll remove that for a moment. And this is for this address right here. We click OK, it gives us that address. Now let's double click again. We'll come off the default and select San Jose, this address, no ship through right now, and we'll click OK and it brings in that one. If we select another one, say Canada, no ship through, we'll click OK and it brings in that. So you have the ability to select your ship code. And again, ship codes were entered under Activity, SOP data, ship address data, where you specified ship to addresses for the customer. So if we browse on our customer here, you can see that we have the 3 that we entered in, and they could be displayed here as well. Clicking Activity, ship address, ship through, you would have specified some ship through codes here. Okay. Alright, so there you go. Now on ship through, we're going to go ahead and make a selection here. This one here, ASL. And we'll click OK. Now as you can see, that didn't change the ship to address here. However, when you do select the ship through, when you print the packing list, it's going to actually show up on the packing list, that ship through address, not the ship to address. So that's important to know. Now if you want to print your packing list, we'll go over to the packing list here. Now there's a special report that will show both the ship to and the ship through, if you so desire that, and that is spelled, and this is in the documentation through, it's port through .rpt. Okay, and that'll actually show both. So why don't we go ahead and process this order here and take a look at that. We'll just enter in a quantity. And we'll save that, and then we'll go ahead and ship this line. Okay, then we'll go over to our packing list. And we'll select that report, port through .rpt, and we'll do the order that we have here now, which is 30. Okay, we won't do any special selections there, and we'll go ahead and run the report. Okay, and you can see it gives the bill to, the ship through, and the ship to. Okay, so you have that option here. We'll go ahead and close that. Alright, so that's it on the shipping address information. Okay, let's go back over to the order. Alright, and let's add a new line. Same part. Okay. Alright, so you can enter in a customer PO if you want to. You can edit the terms. That's browsable. You can enter the ship via. That's browsable as well. Enter in a FBO point and some other information here, ordered by. You could specify the sales rep all the way through there. You can enter in comments. That's browsable, and you have 3 comment lines. And these are printable on the packing list as well. Okay, and you can edit your order notes here too. And make sure that when you do edit the notes that you specify whether it prints on the orders or the invoices. You have to check these boxes here. Okay, we'll close that. Okay. So let's take a look at the detail. So we'll double click on the line we just saved. And we're presented with the sales order detail dialog box. So you can edit any of the details here, and you can click through the lines with this bar right here. You can edit the GL account and browse on it, stock ID, and so on. You have the buttons on the side to create a new line, close the line, cancel the line, edit the notes on that line item, and view stock information, and that'll give you the total, sales committed, total available, and all the different stock locations where that resides. And you can see we have include empty locations is checked, and it's giving us the one that even has a 0 quantity there. Okay, now the price that actually gets pulled in on this line item is dependent on a few things. We went through earlier setting up the price breaks, customer based pricing, and also the price schedule. Now those can be used, and that price will actually be pulled in here when you create the order. But you can see here on this particular line for this part, manual pricing is turned on. Now the reason why that is, if we close here and we go back to activity, SOP data, and we look into part sales, we have our part 11,000 right here. So let's go ahead and enter that. And you can see that we have this checked, manual pricing. So that's overriding this this pricing or any pricing structure and allowing us to use manual pricing here. So we checked that earlier. We'll go ahead and close it because we're going to keep it. But then I'm going to double click on this line, and we're going to take a look at how you can use this manual pricing. Now to invoke this, you will have needed to have set a switch in System Manager under System Configuration, Sales Order, and you can see this key right here, Manual Pricing. Now the default is set to yes. You can set that to no, and it won't invoke the manual pricing functionality on the detail dialog. Ours is set to yes, so it's now invoked. Go ahead and close that, go back over to Sales Order Processing. Quite simply, now that you have manual pricing checked, you have some facilities here to change the price. Now if you want to change it by discount percent, you click on the unit price button and then change the discount. Okay. If you want to change the unit price, you can click on discount and change the unit price. Okay. You see how that works? Or if you're going to affect the undiscounted price, you can just change that here. Okay. And that changes the undiscounted price. Okay, so those are some methods that you have to manually price parts. It'll pull in the default based on the schedule, the quantity price breaks, or the customer based pricing as the default. But if manual pricing is checked, you have the ability to configure the price however you want here by discount or unit price and so on. Okay, let's close our line. Okay, so we're back to our order. Now, after you've added the order, you may want to go ahead and print a sales order acknowledgement. We'll do one real quick here. Select from the report menu, sales acknowledgement, and we'll add our order here. And we'll take a look at the form. You have some selections here to use the customer discount, to print duplicates, and some other items here. Make your selections as you see fit. And then we'll go ahead and select one of the forms, and we'll go ahead and click report. Alright, so as you can see, we have our acknowledgement here. It has all the pricing information, our lines, and so on. Okay, once that's done, you may want to go ahead and print the sales order. Likewise, go into the reports menu, print sales orders, and you can print the sales order here. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into shipping this order. Now you can use this button here with the arrows, and that'll toggle you right over to shipping. Or if you want to, you can go from the menu, Activity, Shipping, and it'll give you the Ship Order dialog box. So we can select our order here, and there we go. Now this ship order is going to actually show you the due quantities. We shipped our first line earlier, so that's now showing 0, but we have a value here to ship. And you have the option, if you go to the shipping menu, to ship order, ship line, or ship partial. You can also access the detail, the totals, and shipping comments. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and enter in a quantity here to ship. I double clicked on that. I'll enter in the quantity. We're going to do a partial, and then quite simply we just ship partial. Okay, now for some reason we made a mistake here, and we have not invoiced it. We can put in a negative quantity here and back that out, and now we're back to 0 again. Okay, let's close our detail line and look at the next thing. Now you'll see down at the bottom of the screen all the shipping totals information. If you double click in that area, you'll be presented with the shipping totals dialog box. Here you can enter or change the order discount, freight charges, miscellaneous charges, and you can even override the account type code. Now this account type code is specified in System Manager, System Configuration, Sales Order, and it's the default AR account type. You see how it's specified as A, which is the default for Macs. You can override that by going into the Totals dialog box, and it's browsable, and you can select a different one. Now this is the overriding default for AR, miscellaneous, sales, discount, commission, expense, and freight accounts. So this is editable. We'll put it back to A, but I just wanted to make mention there that you can override that there if need be. Okay, so we'll save and close. Okay, now once you've done your shipment, the next action you're going to want to do is you're going to want to print a packing list. So let's have a look at that. Okay, well we've opened a different order here that has several lines on it, and we've shipped a couple items, the first 2 lines. Now doing that action activates this print icon here, which accesses the print packing list dialog box. So you can go to the printer, you can go to the window, you can set some options here, you can change the report file used. The stock ones that come with Macs that have a 1 on the end, like I just typed in there, are the forms, and these are laser friendly. The other ones are somewhat of a blank form formatted for a pre-printed form. So anyways, I wanted to show you that you could access it there. But actually you have quite a bit of functionality concerning printing packing list, and there's 2 options. There's an option to print with a packing list number and one to print without. Now you can print a packing list that describes the contents of your shipment, and send that record of shipment contents to a customer along with the physical shipment. The shipped quantity on the packing list represents the quantity shipped as displayed on the shipping form, but not yet posted to post sales orders. And what this means is that any shipments done prior to posting will be available to show on a packing list, but if you've posted the order, they're going to become unavailable to print on the packing list. So you want to make sure that in your sequence of actions here that you go ahead and you do your shipments and then you print your packing list right after that prior to posting. Now only line items that have been shipped but not yet posted print on the packing list. Now Max accumulates the shipped quantities as users ship sales ordered line items until a user posts the order. The accumulated total shipped to date prints on the packing list regardless of the current quantity being shipped. So if you've gone through and you've done several shipments, it will accumulate those quantities, and when you print the packing list, it'll give you the total prior to posting. So that's an important thing to know. When you look at it, you're not going to see the individual shipments, but you're going to see the total prior to posting. Okay. Let's have a look at the packing list form. So I'll click the button here. It brought up our order number automatically and filled that in. We're going to select our report file, and we're going to go to the window. Alright, and there's our packing list form. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close that. Okay, now let's look at some other functionality regarding packing lists. Now there's the packing list report, and that's available from the report menu. Same dialog as the other one, but accessible from the report menu. And also on the activity menu here, you have maintain packing list. You can see that that's grayed right now. So let's find out why that's grayed and how we can activate it so we can maintain packing lists. Okay, so if we go over to System Manager, we go to Activity, System Configuration, there's two places where you can activate this functionality for packing lists. First one is under System Switches. Use packing list number. Now if we set this to yes, we're going to be using a packing list number to print our packing lists. We'll go ahead and save that. Now you need to go over to sales order processing then, and if you want to, you can maintain your next packing list number here. Okay, so those are all set. We'll close the System Manager. We'll close sales order processing and reopen it. Okay, and when we go to our activity menu, you can see now maintain packing list is now active. Okay, so let's see how this works. We're going to bring up a ship order here. Okay. Now we've already done several shipments on this, and it has not been posted yet. So let's go ahead and maintain the packing list. So we'll go to Activity, Maintain Packing List, and if we wanted to do a new one and add the current shipments to that packing list and give it a new packing list number, then we could select all of these or none of them, or make our selections and assign them to that packing list number. Now if we had new shipments and we wanted to add those to this packing list number, we could do that too. Our packing list number 9, it gives us which ones are available to append, and we can make our selection here and add a couple shipments if we wanted to. It says that we added those 3 shipments to this packing list. Okay. Also, if you wanted to unassign shipments to that specific packing list, you could do that too. And we can uncheck them here, and they're no longer part of that shipment. Or that packing list, rather. Okay. We'll go ahead and pick 9 again. Now as you can see here, a negative shipment was done, and that'll show up in yellow. If we want to exclude that, we would do that. And we could save as well. Okay. So basically what you have here is the ability to maintain the packing list. You can assign a new number and add shipments to that. You can append shipments to a packing list, and you can unassign shipments to a packing list. Now another aspect of this is that you have the ability to access the functionality of the packing list number through the print icon here and the packing list report. So we'll go ahead and print that here, and we'll say append. We'll click add, we'll select the packing list, and we'll click report, and that invokes this dialog box. So we can exclude the ones that we don't want to include on this packing list, or we could select all, click OK, and then it's going to give us the report. Alright, so you can create a new one for the most recent shipments. You can append, and you can also reprint too. Alright, so that's it on the packing lists. One other thing that's available here is under reports, print shipping labels. So you can do all, arrange, or individual from an order number list, and you could specify the number of lines between labels as well. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and close the ship order, and the next thing we're going to look at here is the credit memo. So we're going to go into order entry, sales order, credit memo. Now it immediately prompts us for the customer ID. We'll make a selection here, and there's our credit memo, and we're going to put in a quantity and go ahead and save that. So like all the other forms, the sales order form and the quote form and also the ship form, all this information is fully accessible, and many of these fields are actually browsable. So you can go through and maintain all this information, specify a ship to, terms, ship via, and so on. Now you can issue the credit, and this will get processed through, but just like a sales order, in order to complete processing on a credit memo, you have to ship the credit memo. So we've saved this one line here for order number 35. We'll hit the button here, and we'll switch over to the ship, and we'll go ahead and ship that. Okay, and that's now been processed. So this would get posted through. However, this is a credit memo, so it actually applies differently, and it applies as a credit. So you have that functionality in sales order processing to issue the credits, as well as enter orders and so on. Okay, so let's have a look at a few other things here. And we're going to have a look at the various inquiries here in some of the reports. So you can see here there's a whole series of displays to look at information in sales order processing. We can display orders by customer, we can look at an order summary, we can display orders by part, display work orders, display the work order routing, the schedule summary, we can display customer part IDs, and we can display packing lists. So if we go here to display orders by customer, let's go ahead and select a customer. Now this inquiry shows all the orders either open or closed for a specific customer. Lists the order number, the type, the status, whether opened or closed, and the customer PO. You can click any of the buttons down below here. Info gives you the ordered date, the due date, and the sales rep. You can click a particular row and open that order, or you can display the order summary. Okay. Now as you can see here, invoking one of the other dialog boxes, like we just did there, gives you additional functionality to either open a particular order or line, get more info on that line, display the order by part, or display the work orders. So many of these things are on the menu items here, but they link one to the next. So when you're in one, you can actually toggle over to another one by clicking the button. So we'll display orders by part, and there they are. That's all the orders for that particular part out there right now. We can click on a line, click info, and that's going to give you some additional information here. If there are invoices, ship quantities, and the like, that'll be displayed there. If you want to open that line, click the open button. Okay, so those link together very nicely and allow you to browse and query information. This is very handy for customer service personnel. You can also display work orders for a part and the work order routing, and you can look at the schedule summary. And we can pull up a part here. And what this lists here is the projected supply, what the current customer demand is, the dependent demand, and the total demand, and shows what's available to forecast and available to promise. If you want to browse on the part price, click the part price button, and it'll give you some information on the pricing for that part. We'll select another one here and show you some additional information there. We'll click on part price. We can enter in a customer ID here. And it allows you to view the discount type, whether it be standard or customer based. Okay. Close that. You also have the ability to look at customer part IDs. If you've maintained customer part information in the system, you'll be able to see that here and list all the customer part numbers for that particular customer. And also, you can display packing lists. And that'll show you all your packing lists. These are all the ones that are not invoiced, but if you wanted to see ones that have been invoiced, you would check that box and you can run the query. None in there currently right now. And you have some other options to view data by ship date and so on. Okay. Now looking over at the reports, you can browse through these and look at the various different ones. We've looked at a number of these during the training session, the customer list and part sales information, the packing lists, and so on. But some of these are used and very handy for certain personnel and others are not. You can go through and view these and take a look at them, and many of them are helpful. The standard ones, of course, are going to be your order forms and your acknowledgments and so on. So browse through those and get familiar with how they look and what they produce. We do provide the ability to change some of those forms in the reports themselves. As you saw earlier, in each one of the dialog boxes, you can enter in a modified form if you make one with Crystal reports and specify that here, or rename it and make it the standard for the system overall. Okay, well that wraps up our training session on sales order processing and quoting in MAX. Okay, so let's take a look at what we learned today. We learned about the sales order information flow from beginning to end at the very beginning of the session. We learned how to set up sales order processing with all the static information, that was part sales, all the code data, and the many other switch settings that we went over during the entirety of the process of the training session. We also learned how to create sales orders and process those, how to do estimating and quoting, how to enter credit memos, and also how to ship product. We also covered how to use the displays and the reports to provide customer service. Now you have additional resources. Of course, there's the MAX documentation, and that's provided in MAX from the System Manager. Underneath each module, there's a link to a PDF document for the full documentation set for that module. Also, there's another set of information on your MAX server under RM Server Doc. That's a full set of all the PDFs provided with the software when you do the installation. And finally, you have the customer portal. That's located at https://customers.exact.com. Thanks for attending this session, and we hope to see you in the next one.